Hey y'all, my name is Nicole Cagna and I am the host of DominionTV's Ask the Prophet, where we actually answer the hard questions. When the Lord designed this show, He wanted it to be a safe place where His church and His bride could ask the hard questions without judgment. And the last couple of years, we have obliged. Watch us live every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on DominionTV. And don't forget to download the app and become a partner. You will never regret sowing.
You're watching one of the fastest growing Kingdom and Faith television networks, broadcasting from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. Now reaching over 170 nations earthwide with the gospel of the kingdom of God and the uncompromising word of faith. This is a media missions mandate. House to house, city to city, and all around the world. Welcome to the DominionTV network.
In February of 2022, the friends and partners of the DominionTV network purchased Lot 20 in the South Strand of Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, with the vision to build the new headquarters for the Media and Missions Ministry of Dominion Television. After over 32 months, we closed the construction loan for the new home for Dominion Global Media Group and the DominionTV studios. Thanks to the continued support of DTV's partners and friends, we are reporting that the site work has begun at Lot 20. And we are just a few days from receiving the building permit for the construction of our over 6,400 square foot building. All we do at DominionTV is by the faithfulness of friends and partners just like you. Ministries, churches, businesses, families, and individuals all pulling together to see this media mandate to carry the gospel of the kingdom into all the world. We ask that you continue to pray daily over this $1.5 million project and continue to partner with us on a monthly basis as we go into all the world with faith and kingdom broadcasting. Thank you for being a destiny helper in this kingdom work with our founders, Drs. Joseph and Lynette Dutton. Sow your best seed today at www.dominion.tv. And as you sow, believe with us for this current project to be depth.
Thank you for tuning in and watching Dominion TV today. If you have the app, I need you to take a moment and go to your settings and turn on the notifications for our app. When you do that, you're going to get updates such as any special live events going on here in the Dominion TV studio and other things happening at the Dominion TV network. I need you to go to your settings, turn on your notifications for the Dominion TV app today. And while you're in the app, we have a brand new feature where you can submit prayer requests right in the app. When you get to the home page, there's a button right to the right that says prayer request. When you click that link, it's going to take you to a form where you can fill out all of your information. If you'd like to have one of our intercessors contact you, we will do that, but we want to hear from you. We love hearing from you. If you have a testimony, if you want to let us know that you're watching, that you were blessed by one of our broadcasters, just go submit your information on the prayer request form. Just let us know that you're watching and enjoying Dominion TV. Blessed.
The Dominion Television app is your go-to source for faith and kingdom broadcasting. DTV hosts some of the most prolific voices in ministry and the marketplace of the decade, on air now for over 7 years with 24/7 faith and kingdom broadcasting. Dominion Television and Dominion Studios is quickly becoming a resource for believers around the globe, coming along the side of local churches, authors, pastors, and ministers from the Carolinas in the United States to as far away as China and the Middle East. We are fanning the flames of revival and apostolic reformation and giving platform to the kingdom of God on earth. DTV is being watched in over 170 nations on our website, and by downloading the free app, we are fulfilling the media mission mandate to carry the gospel of the kingdom into all the earth, and we will continue to grow as you partner with us today. Don't hesitate, scan the QR code and download the Dominion Television app on all your mobile devices and smart TVs. For more information, visit us today at www.dominion.tv.
Thank you for joining us today on Dominion TV. You are a part of Team Dominion as we carry the gospel of the kingdom into all the world. As you see behind me, we are building the new Dominion TV studios here at Lot 20. Of course, as we build, there are costs involved and our normal budget that must be taken care of. Also, we are believing for this $1.3 million project to be debt-free by the glory of God. Take a moment today and sow your best faith seed into this media missions ministry. And then remember to set up a recurring partnership seed and sow monthly to support 24/7 faith and kingdom broadcasting and to over 170 nations and more. Thank you for your generosity and your support. Together, we are better, and together, we are going to see His kingdom come in all the earth. Thank you for your partnership.
This ministry is able to fulfill the mandate and command of Jesus to carry the gospel of the kingdom into all the world by the faithful support of people just like you. Give online at www.dominion.tv/giving. Here you will find various ways to give, including DTV's PayPal, Zelle, CashApp, and Venmo giving platforms. You can also securely give and partner with us with your credit or debit card and set up your weekly or monthly recurring seed. You can also give by text with your mobile phone. Simply text the word GIVE to 704-817-2843 and follow the prompts for giving securely. If you choose to mail your offering, you can send that to the ministry's mailbox at Dominion TV, 1000 South Commons Drive, Suite 102, Box 305, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, 29588. On behalf of our founders, Dr. Joseph and Dr. Lynette Dutton, may the Lord bless you richly is our prayer.
Hey everybody, welcome. I am Nicole Cagna and this is Ask the Prophet on Dominion Television. We are continuing with our series on marriage and how to have a healthy marriage. It matters. Marriage matters. So the question that we're dealing with is how to have a healthy marriage God's way, because we already know that without God, something really can't be very healthy. It can't be as healthy, at least, as it could be if people would submit themselves to the Lord and to lay their marriage at the feet of Jesus. And we have talked about expectations. We have talked about communication, but we're also going to talk today about seasons and then a little bit more on how to have a healthy marriage God's way. And some of the things we touched upon happen to be, you cannot expect your spouse to be a mind reader. So if there is a need that you have, if there is a need that you know that is not being met within the marriage, this is the time where you sit down with your spouse and you say, hey, this is what I'm not getting, or this is what I need, or you're giving me what you think I need versus what I actually need. And so sometimes what can happen is a person will give you something based on what they think would make a woman happy or a man happy, but that is not specific to your partner. So I'm going to give you an example. I am not a chocolate and flowers girl at all. I love flowers in nature, but flowers die. I have cats, and when my son was super little, he would get into everything. So when my husband, when we first got married, I told him before we had children, I don't really care for flowers because I've always had animals in my life. Even when I was single, I had a cat. And so I've always had the kind of animals that chew on flowers and, will make a mess or vomit up, whatever it is. It's gross. And on top of that, when we finally had Christian, it was like between the animals and the toddler, I could never enjoy flowers. So I would just told him when we first got married, I'm not a flowers girl. I like them in nature, but they die. I'm not that girl. I don't have a lot of vases. Like I can't be bothered with like snipping everything and each little thing in the food. And well, my husband had forgotten that. And it was our anniversary and he was working. And there was this like huge delivery of like multiple bouquets of flowers. And I literally cried. And I didn't cry with happiness. I cried with overwhelm because my son was like, "Wah!" And then he stabbed himself. I'm trying, like everything was delivered and I'm trying to carry it in. The cats are trying to get out of the door. The toddler's trying to get out. I'm trying to stop him. I'm having to pick up all these things. And then there's like 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever, dozen. And I'm like, okay, that's a lot of money. And I remember like, there's like the directions, you have to, clip them right away. And I'm sitting there and the cats are on the counter and I'm like swiping them off. And my son has grabbed one down. And I just remember I cried and my husband came home and I was not in a good place. And he was just like, what's wrong? And also the other thing too is, some of the flowers got delivered dead already. So like, so I just was like, half of these are dead. I don't like flowers. And at first he was offended because he's like, oh, did you get the flowers? And I said, yes, I did. And he's like, you don't seem really happy about it. And I didn't want to like, argue or in front of my son. I'm like, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then later I had to process my feelings because who has time with little kids, right? And I remember I cried and he was just like, what did I do? Like, what happened? And I said to him, you ordered from 1-800-Flowers, like all these bouquets of flowers that were a certain amount and things were tight at that time. I said, when all I wanted was to spend one night, like on a date with you. That's what I wanted. I did not want a bunch of flowers on my door, something else that I have to take care of, some other additional responsibility, I said. And furthermore, the expense of it. And we can't have both because money is tight. And you chose flowers, which I've said for the last 7 years that I don't like. And I literally said it for 7 years. So I was like, I was hurt. And I was hurt because I said, I feel like you gave me what you think I needed versus what I told you I needed. And that's why I'm hurt. And that set him, like he would thought about that. And I was like, I understand your heart. I know your heart is pure. I'm not addressing, I said your heart. And I don't feel like I have to be grateful when for 7 years when I've said, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. And I was like, I feel like you gave me something. You made a phone call. You swiped your card. I said to him, and you gave me something that I have no use for, that puts more work on me. And half of them were dead. And even if they weren't, like, it's just more work. I was making phone calls to to try to get a refund. Like it was ridiculous. And I said, I cried because the gift is you. I said to him, you're the gift. Like, I want to go out and spend time with you, quality time. I don't want these things. I don't care for them. I can't put them out even because of the cats. They have to go upstairs. I have no vases. I said to him, I have nothing to put them in because I don't like flowers. So like they literally just, it was a mess. I didn't even know what to do. I think I might've put them on the porch or like I put them outside because I was like, I literally have no place to put them. There's nothing, no containers, nothing. And so from the outside looking in, somebody could look and be like, well, that's ungrateful, blah, 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 blah. Show gratitude. No, because in relationships, communication looks like being honest. And being honest and explaining what you want and what you need is important. And if somebody gives you what they think you need versus what you need to address it. Because otherwise, if you just keep smiling and nodding, you're never going to get what you need. He remembered that. He remembered it. And he would even write reminders like for the next year, don't get flowers, make a reservation. And everything after that began to be more intentional because he realized, gosh, she feels love when we're together. She doesn't, flowers don't equate love to her. To another woman, it might. To her, spending time with me without the chronic child interruption. That is what she desires. She wants time away from the house, time away from the toddler, time away from all the animals and from all the responsibilities cloying. She wants to eat a meal that she didn't make. That's what she wants. So he had to like hear that again and really talk about it. And it was a very tough conversation because I have a lot of compassion, and I don't ever want, somebody I love to feel hurt. But at the same time, the Lord was like, Nicole, this is like now 7, like you have to nip this in the bud, because each year going by, you're going to grow more and more resentful and feeling unheard and feeling like you're not having your needs met because somebody is giving you what every woman, some scripts, romantic movie scenes and all that nonsense tells you that women want, which is why I tell you that you can't treat men and women as gender roles. There is no male or female in Christ Jesus because each person's different. The gifts that my husband likes are very different than the gifts that another guy would like. My husband loves suits. He loves, just looking sharp. He dresses sharp for work. And I like shopping for him and getting him things. And, I watch what he eyes. I'm very intentional when I purchase something for him. And I think what I was feeling was that was not the case, even though in his mind, he was being intentional because he planned this a month ahead of time. In my mind, it was not intentional because you didn't give me something that I needed and wanted. You gave me something that you thought would be okay. And that was what was upsetting. So that's why I believe, and I use that story, of course, with all, intention of letting the truth of how marriage works, that even in healthy marriages, which we have a great marriage, the reason why it's healthy is because we have had those conversations, because I don't believe in faking it. And because I don't believe in tiptoeing on eggshells. Eggs are for breakfast. I'm not going to walk on them. That's just how it is. I don't walk on eggshells, but I believe in delivering news with respect and with honor and with love always. But I had to process my feelings first because I was just like, I was so overstimulated and I could not, I felt like everything was a task. Those kinds of things were tasks. They were not gifts. They were tasks. And at the stage of life that we were in. Now, if my husband said to me, Nicole, today with my 13-year-old, do you want me to buy you some flowers? I would say, no, please don't. Please, please, please don't. You know what I want you to do? Let's go for a walk on the beach with a Starbucks. That's what I want. Like, I just want to sit next to you and talk quality time. That's what I want. That to me is what I want. I don't even want $1 million. Like, don't even get me jewelry. I don't care. I really don't. I just want to spend time with you. And that's how I feel loved, is quality time. And of course, acts of service. And he feels loved with words of affirmation and physical touch. And I'm not saying, listen, I am not saying that every guy that has a physical touch love language, that it has to be sexual. I always like to stop that right from the get-go, because in charismatic culture, sometimes they'll manipulate that book for coercion in sexual intimacy. And that is not God's way at all. So I don't like that. I believe that it's important to hug your spouse, hold their hand. That's physical touch. Okay. Not everything has to lead to intimacy in that sense. Intimacy begins with the mindset. It ends with the body. The fruit of intimacy is sex, but intimacy actually begins here. It begins in your heart. It begins in your head. It begins at the beginning of the day. It's an everyday thing. It's how you cherish each other. That's what real intimacy is. And the fruit of that intimacy is when you make love together and you become one. That is the fruit of that. But you can't get there if you don't have honesty. And if you don't decide, and experience and share what makes you feel loved. So this is why communication and expectation is so clear. You cannot get mad at your spouse if you don't explain these things, right? And sometimes, you have to have wisdom in how you explain things. You can't just say, now, if I approached my husband and I was like, you know what, you always get me flowers every year. How many times do I have to tell you that? Da, 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 da? Lord, who wants to talk to that hot mess? Nobody. So I processed all my feelings first. Then I take that and I talk to the Lord and I work with it through and then I sit with my spouse, because that's the most important thing to do. I have to get rid of all the initial stuff. I don't want to put that on somebody else. That's my responsibility. Then I can sit down and articulate logically without all the, emotions wrapped up in it. And even if I get teary-eyed and choked up, that's different. I'm not out of control angry. When he saw that, how I felt, that it was because I don't cry like really easy relationally at all. But when he saw that, he honestly, like, his eyes filled with compassion. He was like, I'm so sorry. You're so right. You've been telling me this for how long? He's like, and I just keep forgetting. And you're right. He's like, I could see how that would just make you feel like you're just like, oh, every woman likes flowers, when you have specifically told me from day one that that's not how you feel loved. You don't care for that, especially since you have animals. So he responded in a way that was compassionate, because I also approached him in a way that was not condemning, you see, or accusatory. It was, when my needs are continuously ignored in lieu of something else that you think I should want, it makes me feel unseen, unheard, and unloved. That kind of tone of voice, the way I'm talking to you, is how I talk. It's just, I'm not a yeller, never have been, unless I was quieting down a classroom or, calling my son who was about to run into traffic. But generally, unless I'm preaching, and I'm loud when I preach, sometimes that might seem like I'm yelling, but I'm really not. But when I'm communicating to somebody, especially somebody that I love, I never want to come across as, what's the word, out of control or unhinged. I don't want to have to mop up a mess, because sometimes in the middle of your emotions, when you're trying to explain or talk and you're in a space of anger, and this is for men and women, because men can get angry and they could get emotional too. They can get really angry and they have to walk away sometimes from a conversation in order to be able to make sure that they're not going to say something hurtful or along those lines. And so it's really good to know how you process things so you could bring your best self to your spouse. Because remember, we are all responsible for our own feelings. And so part of knowing how to do this is seasons and growth. The first year I said, I told Chris when we were dating that I was not a big flowers person, and he didn't really catch on right away. And then the first year I said it, and I was a little bit more, demure probably about it. And then the second year I direct said it, but I never addressed the feelings part. I just would say, I don't like flowers. Like, remember, I don't like flowers, babe. I just want to let you know, I just want to remind you, whatever. I would say something like that, but I never expressed how it made me feel. And that's not on me, but because I just said, I don't like them. They die. That's my reasoning. But when he would bring those flowers home, I felt so bad that I didn't want to seem ungrateful. So only when it got to that point where I was like, I don't know how else to do it. Like, do I need a banner kind of thing? I realized I'm getting ticked now. Like, now I'm getting resentful. And I knew that in the season that I was in as the mom, an exhausted mom, of a toddler who, was diagnosed at that time. Thank God the Lord has healed him, but with autism, and animals and life, and, having to make homemade soap because his skin, he had eczema so bad. I had to make homemade everything. This was just one more thing. And so that's why you have to understand that sometimes even seasons change. I never liked flowers, but there might be a time when you were dating your wife and flowers were the greatest things in the world, or you were dating your husband and getting him a certain kind of gift was the greatest thing in the world. And then you have kids. And now all of a sudden he doesn't have time as much to do that hobby. So he doesn't want those golf clubs, or he doesn't want those running shoes, or he doesn't want that gym membership just yet because it's easier for him to work out at home. And you're going to buy him a gym membership when he's really a partner, a good partner with you. And there's no time. And all he's going to feel is condemnation because now there's this membership that's sitting there that you bought him that he can't use because you both are in the season of life where you have little kids and he's working full time or maybe working a second job and you're staying at home. And so my point is that you have to examine seasons in order to grow. I remember when I was counseling a couple, my husband and I, we were counseling a couple and the husband said, she's not the woman I married. And I asked for an explanation because I wanted to know what he was talking about. And he's like, well, she's not spontaneous. Everything has to be a schedule. And I said, well, what is something new that just happened? And he's like, well, we just brought home our baby a few months ago. Ding, ding, ding. Like, knock, knock. Who's there? Yes. So my husband and I then set some things straight. Here we have a new mother. Her entire body changed. Her life changed. Her heart is now outside of her body. She's trying to navigate postpartum healing, lack of sleep, new demands from this new tiny human. This is not the time that, I said your wife is going to throw caution to the wind. She's not going to be spontaneous because babies thrive on schedules. So, maybe your life, and Chris said this too, he's like, maybe your life didn't turn upside down. He goes, although it should have, because my husband's an equal partner. He goes, and if it hasn't, then I'm kind of wondering, my husband said, what you're actually doing in the home, he said to the guy. He's like, because if it's only her life that changed, he's like, that's a problem. And then he's like, but anyway, you have to understand. He said, what are you doing? He said to the guy at home to support those changes. What are you doing? He said, to support her. So oftentimes in these circumstances, we find that one party wants everything to stay the same, but that's not realistic. Okay. Babies thrive on schedules. A mom wants her baby to thrive. She needs to survive. Okay. She wants this postpartum period to pass, meaning she's loving the time with her newborn, but she's struggling with her own body changes, with pain, with healing, with lack of sleep. There's so much, you feel like you lose a part of yourself, even though you've gained a really amazing part. So there's a lot of shifts that happen. And my husband called it out. He's like, you're expecting her to act like she did prior to becoming a mother, but she has a new name and you're a father, he said. So where are you in this mix? And so he was cautioning him. He's like, if you put this pressure on your wife, he's like, now she'll never forget how you treated her postpartum, he said. And if you treat her poorly now and have false expectations because of your needs, he's like, and you're not stepping up and you're not truly loving and saying, hey, take all the time that you need to heal and not pressuring for intimacy and not, saying, oh, let's go out on a date 3 weeks in. And he's like, and if you're not supporting, he's like, you're having an unrealistic expectation. He's like, both of your lives should have changed. So understand that each season will bring an opportunity to see your spouse in a new light. So, I remember when I became a mom, I was like, I look like a melted candle. I gave birth to twins. I was like, I was all baby, and I had edema and I had stretched skin. Like I just felt so gross. And my husband was like, I think you're more beautiful because, of your sacrifice. And I really needed to hear that until it became, until I felt it. I mean, it helped. I'm not saying that it didn't help, but I kept needing to hear that until it became something that I could embrace. And that helped me recover a part of myself that I thought was gone forever. So a good spouse will do that.
If your husband is in a season where he is struggling, where he is just struggling and he's working 2 and 3 jobs and things like this, and he's working extremely hard, you can't expect him to stay awake on a couch. He's going to fall asleep. It doesn't mean you're boring. It means he's tired. Like, we have to understand the season. And sometimes what can happen is, if we don't understand the season, we're going to have expectations that are not realistic. So when my husband became assistant principal, it actually meant new sacrifice and later evenings. So at first, it was hard to adapt to that schedule for us, because now Christian was in 7th grade. He had a lot of work to do. My husband had to attend games, both local and away. So that's 2 nights a week, past 9 o'clock at night. So I struggled with what that shift would look like. But once I realized that the way that I ran my schedule before, it was for a different season, I had to adjust. That means that I had to change the way that I worked to accommodate his new season, just like when I travel and go to different churches and travel at a conference in New York or New Jersey or, wherever, that he's going to be taking on parenthood for that weekend and taking on the full responsibility for the weekend, because that's what we do. So we both had to adjust. But I struggled at first because I was just like, what is this going to look like? But I also felt blessed because I got to see him walk in a leadership role that he was destined for in his job. And I felt blessed to support him and walk with him through this new season. And similarly, my husband recognizes the season that I'm in and what God is doing. So he makes room for it as well. And that's the beauty of loving and living sacrificially. If I have a doctor's appointment that's 3 hours away for Addison's disease, my husband will take off and he will drive. He does not want me driving there, getting, poked and prodded and then driving all that way back. He will take off and he will drive me to that appointment because he loves me and he cares for me. And he's not like, oh, well, no, he'll do what is needed just like I do. That's what it is. So knowing that that's his season, I'm the one who made the adjustment. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to make that adjustment because he's walking in this role. And then he makes the adjustment when I'm walking and doing and having to do Leadership Academy and doing this and preparing messages and all of that. He's like, he'll be the guard. He'll tell my son, who's almost 13, but still, mom, right? And he'll say, don't go in that office. He'll say, you leave your mom alone. You have something to ask, you ask me. She's working. Mom's working. Don't interrupt her for something. He's like a guard dog over that office door, because he knows if I'm concentrating and I'm listening to the Lord and I'm writing a message and God is speaking, I need to concentrate. I'm in the zone with the Lord, and he guards that. He guards that because he loves me and I love him. And that's the beauty. So we have to understand that it bothers me sometimes that we forget and give each other, we don't give each other grace for these seasons. It bothers me sometimes that I look at marriages and I'm like, if you just understood that they're not little forever, or they're not the teenage years, they're not going to be this busy forever. It'll be busy, but it's not, that it looks different. Each stage of childhood looks different. Each stage of marriage, you grow and you change. And so sometimes when couples will say, they're not the same. Well, I hope not. I hope they're not the same. You're supposed to change. And then I say, well, you know what? There's a difference between being married 25 years and doing the same first year 25 times versus growing in 25 years of marriage or 30 years of marriage or 20 years of marriage or 10 years of marriage, and understanding that's going to look different, because you have to understand their seasons. I hear women say, young women, they're afraid of marriage. They're afraid of children because they're afraid of losing themselves. And you know what? You should be afraid of that if you married the wrong partner. If you marry a child, you're going to be stuck with a child. That's the bottom line. If you marry a child, that is what you're going to be stuck with. And if you have children with a child, then you're going to be a mom of all of them. Not sexy, not marriage material. Don't marry the wrong partner. Okay? When I birthed our twins, I stayed at home with Christian until he had to go to preschool for early intervention services. Okay? And this is something, always discuss this. This is something where I wasn't sure, first of all, if we even wanted to have kids. He wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. We weren't sure. We were like, we can go either way. But then it came, like that desire to have a baby came, and it hit me and knocked me so far. I was like, oh, is that what this is? Oh, so then we talked about it, and he's like, okay, yeah, let's try. And so, and there it began. There the journey began. So sometimes you get married, not sure, and then all of a sudden this desire will hit you. And the key is, are you with somebody who's flexible that will say, or will they hold you to that and say, oh, you said you weren't sure if you wanted kids, and I don't want them. Blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden we have contention. So again, these are things that need to be discussed. When you have children, who's going to be the stay-at-home partner? Sometimes the husband, if he makes less, will be the stay-at-home partner. If a woman is financially successful in her field and she's making $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000, then it makes sense for her to continue working. And it makes sense at that point for the husband to stay home, or vice versa, depending on whoever's making more. So you have to have those hard conversations. You have to, and if as a woman, you're like, hey, listen, I may be making $200,000, but I want to stay home with my child. I want to stay home with my baby. Then as a husband, you have to look and say, well, how much then should we save so we can have 2 gap years while you stay home for 2 to 3 years with the child? So these are all conversations that you have to have. Okay. My son was almost 4 when he went to preschool, and I ran a business consistently throughout that time. Since he was probably about a year old, I ran a business. I made money for the extras that we needed, because my brain is such that I always have to have a side hustle. That's just my personality. And I know a lot of my friends are the same. a lot of the women that I meet for coffee and stuff like that, they have that same kind of drive, and that same, like, they're very intelligent women, and they're business women, and they're very thoughtful, and they're moms, but they're also more than that. And so I think it's important that you always have something that is you. I focused more on the business, of course, when Christian went back to school, and then God shifted that business to what he has me doing today. But when the Lord called me to travel, my husband was supportive. He even took days off if needed. He knew, he said, listen, he's like, my job is not more important than yours. He's like, I just want you to know. He would say that to me. He's like, listen, my job, he's like, is you both of us have equally important jobs. He knew the season that we were in, and he acted accordingly. Now I have much more availability now, of course, than I did when my son was 3. But when you marry the right partner, you have a supporter. You don't have a saboteur. That's where you yield and partner with each other. You yield to each other. So I never, like, if I was sick, I would tell my husband, go to work. Don't worry, I'll take care of Christian. And he would be like, are you serious? Like, you have, bronchitis when Christian was little. I know you need rest, Nicole. He's like, you're going to end up in the hospital. You need rest. I'm taking off. And he would take off, because in my mind, I was thinking of him, because in my mind, I'm like, I'd walk through fire for that man. So I got this, like, I'll hold this down at home. Like, you go do what you got to do. I'm tough. And I am. And he said, no, I know you are. I know you can, but I don't want you to have to. I want you to rest. And I know that you won't rest unless I'm home and caring for our child. So I'm going to take the day, because I have sick days. He goes, I'm going to take the day. And he did. That's love. Yielding to each other, not living, as if your needs are the only one that matters. So you have to get that seasons will change. And now, if there's something at night that he has going on, I take over dinner, and I take over the homework with my son, and I take over, all of the after school activities, because he's assistant principal. And then in the evenings, he comes home, and then he takes care of things. So then, and cleans up and does the dishes after I cook dinner. So that way, I can go back in the office and get some work done. And this is the give and take. It comes very natural to us because we've communicated it. We've shared our love. We've shared our likes. We've shared our dislikes. So this is where you have to have wisdom in a marriage. Because if you think about it, if you don't communicate, then there is going to be a canyon between you two. Healthy marriages require quality time. They just do. They require quality time, and healthy marriages require non-sexual physical touch. And this is a big one. And I'm just checking my comments here. There we go. And this is a big one. And the reason why it's a big one is because a lot of times, and there's always jokes about this, a lot of times in a marriage, if a wife goes to hug her husband, and the complaints that I hear couples say, and I'm blessed, but I hear couples say, I just want to hug him, and he turns it into something else. And they feel like they can't be affectionate with their spouse because there has to be an end result, if you catch my drift. And there is nothing that will kill the mood faster than like all of a sudden you're hugging your spouse, and then there's this expectation that it has to end a specific way. If you do that all the time and make your partner feel like that, they're not going to want to just hug you. They're going to stop touching you completely. Healthy marriages require quality time. That doesn't mean looking to your spouse only when you have a need. And this goes for both men and women, by the way, because this goes both ways. And even though we typically hear it one side, it still goes both ways. Okay. Quality time looks like something. Let's talk about it. Quality time means you're interacting without the distractions of the phone, the kids, the screens. It could look like holding hands while sitting outside on a warm summer night on the porch or the patio. It can look like eating dessert together at the table alone. Date nights are important no matter how you plan it. It could be free or it can be expensive. It's up to you. It depends on your budget. It could be something simple. It could be something extravagant based on your budget, babysitters, time. In order for a couple to feel connected emotionally, this is not a, what do you call this? A buffet. It's a necessity. Just like it requires communion with the Holy Spirit, a marriage requires communion. It requires a connection. It requires time together. Like any relationship, it also requires that the aspect of non-physical touch. Like, let me help you all. Okay. I'm about to try to help you. Okay. A woman especially wants to feel valued for who she is and not just the physical release that sex provides, because intimacy starts with holding hands, and intimacy starts with your heart. It starts with intention. Intimacy, okay, that's I, has to begin with another I word, and that is intention. Okay. This is a necessity. A woman especially wants to feel loved. Husbands, if you want your wife to enjoy your hugs, if you want your wife to not flinch when you touch her, then don't grope her. Don't treat her body as an object. Okay? Cherish her. Cherish who she is by showing that you value and you love her. Don't say things like, you better finish what you started, or other comments that make her feel as if she initiates a non-sexual touch, it has to lead to the bedroom. Because if you do that, you're not going to get what you want. If the only time you touch her is for sex, then she will not receive or reciprocate touch if she doesn't want to engage in intimacy, which will leave you starved. So this becomes an argument, and this is the typical argument also that Chris and I have seen when we have counseled couples consistently. Both parties are frustrated. And if you create an all or nothing environment, you will lose. And there's this myth, and I want to just squash this. There's this myth sometimes in charismatic culture that the husband is like the sex-starved, hungry guy, and the woman is like the demure, like, oh no. And that is just not true. Like, it's not true. And that kind of rhetoric and that kind of, oh, your body doesn't belong to you kind of thing that has been used as coercion, that has ruined more marriages and has ruined sexual intimacy in marriages more than anything I have ever seen. Because when that was being discussed about your body belongs to each other, it was because in that specific time period, couples who had just gotten saved or accepted Jesus, who converted to Christianity, believed that they could be more Christian or they could be more holy if they abstained from sex within their marriage. So they believed a lie. They believed that if they would be considered more devout than anybody else if they avoided sex. And do you want to know the decision makers who did that? It was the men. It was the men in the household, because they felt that they would be more holy if they abstained from intimacy with their wives. And Paul was discussing, saying, no, like, your body belongs to each other. You can't make a decision when you're married. You can't make that decision for your wife and for you, because you're married. That's the covenant that you entered into is an intimate covenant. So you can't say, I'm never having sex again in your own marriage, because you can't make that decision on your own, because there's two of you. And so Paul was like, don't do that. Like, you have to include your wife in the decision making. You can, if both of you agree, which is why he says, if there's both for a time, for a position, if you guys both agree, okay, for 2 weeks, we're going to fast, pray, and avoid intimacy, then that's one thing. But you can't make that decision. One party can't make that decision and say, I am going to abstain from sex forever because I want to be holier than everybody else. That's not how that works. That's what it refers to. And unfortunately, that scripture has been weaponized. And I've heard it in counseling where the spouse will say, and I'm not going to lie to you, it's mostly the husband, where the spouse will say, she's not supposed to withhold from me. And I'm over here like, that is not, you have to understand that you cannot use that scripture when you're not creating an environment where intimacy is had, because a woman won't give you her body if she can't trust you with her heart. She's not going to give you her body if she can't trust you here and here. If you're not a safe place for your wife to share her thoughts or feelings, she's not going to want to share her heart or her body. And if she agrees to intimacy because she'll then have to deal with your pouting or quoting scripture out of context, then get ready for a rotten marriage. I'm telling you. And it's the same thing. Husbands, wives, you have to be a safe place. You can't say to your husband, I want you to open up to me. I want you to tell me how you feel. And then he does. And you're just like, not like that. And you're like, oh, you crying? Why are you crying? Or you're like, making him feel defensive when he's explaining how he feels. If he says something to you about how he feels about something you did and you're defending yourself, don't expect to have an emotional intimacy. So similarly, if you want him to be a safe place for your heart, you too, ladies, need to be a safe place for his. There ain't no double standard in here. Both. You make that man feel heard. You don't have to agree. Feelings, you don't have to agree with somebody's feelings. Remember that. Feelings are feelings. They're not right. They're not wrong. They exist. That we don't live by them. They help us navigate where our heart is. That's all. Okay. Your tongue is the rudder. This is the thing right here that we have to watch. And if you need to take time, to breathe, to process your feelings, do so. But don't emotionally vomit all over your partner. Please don't do that. Okay. Spouses need to know that you value their feelings. Both spouses need to know. They need to know that they're not a means to an end, but a blessing. And this is why I get upset when people say and minimize men by saying, well, his job is to provide and protect. I'm like, wrong. He's more than a paycheck. Okay? He's a person. All right? Your husband has feelings. He has needs. He has emotions. He has insecurities. Be a space where he could share that with you. Be a space that is so open and safe that he could tell you anything. That's what cultivates a great. I could tell my husband anything. He is my best friend. And he tells me everything, and he can tell me his heart because he says I'm his best friend. And I make sure that whether he needs a hug, whether he needs me to just listen, whatever it is, I am that space because I love that man. And when you love that man, when you love that woman, you're going to do whatever it takes to work on you and clear out all of this nonsense so you could have a clean, pure heart and hold that to your spouse and say, here, this is your space, honey. This is your space. You come on over here. Let's talk about it. How you feeling about this? Be a space. Okay. Husbands need that. They need to be able to share their heart without criticism, without nagging, without correction, without judgment. If your husband is sharing his heart, don't try to solve his problem. Practice active listening skills. And please don't ever say, well, I done told you so. Them's fighting words. Don't do it. Don't do it. They have to be able to share their heart. Okay? Don't try to solve his problem. Gentlemen, don't try to solve her problem. You know what you do? You speak like this. Okay? Someone's telling you, practice active listening. What does that look like? I'm going to tell you. This is what I'll say. So if I understand correctly, I'm hearing you say that when I do A, B, and C, you feel X, Y, and Z. Am I understanding that correctly? That's if he's sharing something that bothers him that you do. That's how to not be defensive. But if he's sharing about a difficult day, ask questions like, or comments like, wow, I'm so sorry that happened. How did that make you feel? Or, how did you get past that? Or, what ended up happening with that? Just questions that will allow him to give details. Okay, that makes him feel safe. And if he doesn't want to talk about something, don't push. He might need to process. That's the one thing about my husband and I, that we never push each other. We give each other time to process in the way that we know how. And we always verbalize it so it doesn't feel like abandonment. So if I'm frustrated, I'll say, I'm angry. And so I'm going to go upstairs and I'm going to process those feelings. And then I would like to talk about it later. And he'll go, okay. Or he'll say, I just need some time to just think. And I'll say, okay. And we go from there. It doesn't happen often because we practice our communication. But when it does happen, we give each other space. Please don't follow your husband around. Don't do that. No, please don't do that to him. That is awful. That is horrible. Don't be the bird behind the chirp, 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 chirp behind his, and he's trying to walk away and create some distance. And then he finally snaps and says something mean. And you're like, how could you? Well, you badgered him. And similarly, husbands, don't be harsh with your wives. Be gentle and tender. Okay. Remember, your husband is not a child. Ladies, he's an adult. So don't treat him like a kid. All right. Treat him like the man that you fell in love with. Hug him often. Kiss him thoroughly. Let your children see that mom and dad love each other. Make them roll their eyes now and then. Christian rolls his eyes at us. When my husband comes home, we embrace. He still has his jacket on. I hug that man for dear life. Why? Because I love him. He comes home. I'm happy he's home. Thank you, Jesus, for getting him safe. I get to walk into that embrace and stay there, and everything just melts away. And it's been like that for nearly 20 years. And when my son was little, he'd pull on our pant legs and we would pick him up, and we called it a family hug. And even at almost 13, thank God he'll give us a couple minutes, but then he'll come right on in, and we open our arms like this and we just stand there together, and we call it a family hug because we love each other. So again, let your kids see that you treat your husband with honor and respect, and vice versa. Gentlemen, make sure that your children see that you speak kindly to your wife because they're watching you. Okay. Affirm your husband with your words. Let him know how much he means to you. There is this misnomer that men don't like to be told that they're amazing or compliment. That's not true. I don't know where those lies came from. I'm assuming it's from this gender role nonsense. Of course he needs to hear words of affirmation. Of course he needs to hear that he's handsome, that he looks nice in what he's wearing, that he smells good, that he looks good. He wants to see that, hey, thank you for doing those dishes, not because he went above and beyond, but because he thanked you for making dinner. Just show appreciation to each other. I'm like, that's his job. No, no, that's not the way. Humble yourselves, serve each other, walk around with basins in your marriage, wash each other's feet. I promise you, if you do that, you're going to have an amazing marriage. Okay. Appreciate your husband, appreciate your wife, speak highly about your spouse when you're around your kids, because you're teaching them how to be affirming. I said to Christian the other day, do you see my car? He said, yeah. I said, it's on full. Guess who did that? And he goes, Daddy. I said, that's right. Do you think it's because mommy can't pump gas? He goes, no, it's because daddy doesn't want you to have to. I said, that's right. I said, your father, if you want to know what Christ's love looks like in a man, I said to my son, Chris wasn't even around. I said, look at your daddy. That's Christ's love. And he nodded his head. Do that. Do that. Do that. Now we have more to share, but we're going to continue again next week, because this is a powerful series. All right. And I want you to really embrace it. All right. So if you have any questions about this or anything else, you can email me at thebridalcallministries@gmail.com. And I will see you guys next week for part 4 of Healthy Marriage series. Share this with a friend, and I'll see you next week.